Oh my gosh, I am really looking forward to today's podcast chat, as I always am. I had the good fortune of sitting next to today's guest at a networking dinner recently, and we just had such a beautiful conversation. I wanted to continue it here. Olivia is a young woman embarking on an exciting journey of self-discovery and working out what's next in her life. And that is just a topic that I am, a topic at my heart. And I'm so really excited to chat with Olivia and to see where she's at in the process and what she's going through, because it reminds me of when I was a similar age and on a similar journey. And I'm really looking forward to today's chat to compare notes, but to look at it through refreshed eyes of somebody who's embarking on their journey. So Olivia, welcome to the podcast. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you so much for having me, Catherine. It's such an honour, and I feel so excited and just pinching myself because, as you know, once we met at that networking event, I've absolutely loved your podcast. I've really loved listening to other women, and I really aspire to, I guess, get that level of insight and self-discovery. And so it was a bit of a pinch me moment when you asked me to come on. So I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, I love that. And it was just that the podcast is about women at all stages of life sharing their journey. And I thought it was super exciting because it is a self-discovery. It is. And that's not to say that we only do that when we're young, but it's embarking on something that is, what do you want your life to be like? And I just love that so much. And you're a similar age to my daughter who's going through a similar journey as well. So that's super cool to be able to compare notes there.
Yeah.
So Olivia, we both live in Canberra at the moment. We met in Canberra. And for those, our international listeners, that's the capital of Australia. But you haven't always lived here, have you?
No, I've been here since July 2020. So
right
only
in COVID.
The last couple of years. Yeah,
yes.
right
in the middle of COVID. So tell me, where did you grow up? Where?
I'm from a small country town in Queensland called Texas. And everyone gets really disappointed it's not America when I say that. But so I spent a lot of time there, but I predominantly grew up in Brisbane. Texas is just a really small town, and my mum was a single mum, so she didn't want me to have to go off to boarding school. So we moved to Brisbane when I was quite young.
Wow.
But I did spend quite a bit of time in Texas because my grandparents are there, and I'd spend my holidays out there. And yeah.
What's the population, just for probably our Australian listeners and also international? Where is Texas in Australia?
It's on the Queensland-New South Wales border. So it's out west. It's quite remote. There's I would say roughly 1,000 people. So it's really quite small.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that would have been a big step for your mum too, being a single mum, and then up her life to help support you. How beautiful is that? Yeah.
Lovely. My mum has always been a nomad. She has traveled. Well, she's moved quite a bit. She had lived in Brisbane. She'd lived in other country towns. And, for her, she just knew that wasn't the life that she wanted for me.
Yeah.
Well, for us, really, she didn't want to be separated from me. I think you could go to grade 10. But really, I think most kids were leaving for, grade 8. And, it was
decision,
so nice.
Isn't it? That's a big decision about, if you think about now that you're embarking on your journey of what's next in life, she probably was doing something very similar, bringing up a baby. Do you have brothers and sisters? Do you have siblings?
I have half siblings, but I didn't grow up with any siblings. So I grew up as an only child, my mum's only child, but I was really lucky. My mum had a couple of brothers. So I have, quite a few cousins, and I've got, my mum's family are amazing. So I definitely didn't miss out family-wise. I have the best family. But I do have some siblings from my dad's side.
Okay, yeah. So that would have been, big decisions for your mum to make and for you, and thinking about what is going to be good for you both moving forward.
Absolutely, moving away from her sort of network, in the country to...
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a strong woman to be able to do that.
Absolutely.
So you grew up in Brisbane predominantly. You went to school in Brisbane.
Yeah.
So that's in Queensland for those that are not familiar with Australia. And then what happened after school? What did you do after school?
I wasn't that sure on what I wanted to do. I'd sort of thought maybe psychology, maybe arts. My mum was really pushing me to do something creative because she knew that was my strong suit. But I don't know, there was something that was really holding me back from embracing the arts.
Interesting.
It definitely wasn't family pressure.
Yeah.
My mum was really like, you're so creative, you should do something in that area. But there was something in me that was like, no, it's not a real job. I have to go get something
interesting
in business.
Oh my gosh, that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been interesting because now I'm a photographer. So
yes.
you land on your feet eventually. But I did actually go and study creative industries, which is a really wishy-washy degree, and I wasn't enjoying it. So then about 6 months into my studies, I looked into applying to join the army.
Oh, wow. Wow. Creative army. Yes.
Yeah, it fits, right? And that was a struggle within itself. But I eventually got in, I was accepted. So the following year, so I was studying in 2013. In 2014, I enlisted. Wow. And I was taking like, this is just a bit of an adventure. I've only got to be here for a year. That was my contract.
Yeah.
You know, it'll be completely different to anything I've done. I'll meet some amazing friends. And then I'll come back and study. It was almost like my version of a gap year.
Like your gap year in the armed forces.
Yeah, just like traveling the world, except and I loved training. Training was really, it was awful and it was amazing. It was just things that I'd never done, things that I would never experience unless I joined the armed forces. And you're doing it with 60 other people. So you get these really close connections, and I think for me it was really worthwhile, the training aspect of it. And then I got posted down to Adelaide. Yeah. And that was amazing. That's my favourite city in Australia.
How old were you when this was happening? How old were you?
I was 19.
You were young, yeah. So 19. So you went to uni, did a year of uni, or roughly, then enlisted in the army.
Yeah.
Did your training, and then got posted to a city away from. Where did you do your training? Was that in?
It's Kapooka. It's in Wagga Wagga.
Yeah. That's my neck of the woods. I grew up in Young, so that's my local. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think when you're training, there's so many people. Everyone's in the same boat that you almost don't even think about your life before. Home. You're so focused on what you're doing and getting through the week. It was only when I finished my training and I got posted to Adelaide that it sort of clicked that I've left home. I've moved out. Like, it was actually quite a shock to be like, oh, I'm not living in Brisbane with my mum anymore.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah.
I got really lonely.
Oh, so when you went to Adelaide.
Yeah, I think I just wasn't prepared for, you go through school. Every experience I had, you're surrounded by so many people doing similar things. And moving to Adelaide was a shock. I was posted to a really small unit. Yeah. There weren't that many people there. And to be fair, I made some amazing friends, but it was just such a different experience from what I'd had,
That's interesting, isn't it? Because I've got a lot of friends that are in the armed forces, and I've kind of heard different stories of training and the like, but it's interesting that you do all of this very intense training, then you go to your placement, like your first placement, and then it's just like, oh my gosh, my world is different here. So did that take a bit of adjusting too?
It does, and the training is so intense, and you're not making any decisions. You're asking other adults if you can go to the bathroom. Like, that's the sort of level of you're not making any decisions to then be sort of thrown back out into the world. And it's quite jarring to be like, oh, actually I have to take over my life again.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, and they do it for a reason. You obviously have to be able to follow orders.
Yeah.
But it is, those first couple of months after training is quite jarring to be like, all right, yeah, no, I have control over my life again, kind of.
Yeah. So what were you doing in Adelaide? What was your job there in there?
I was a clerk, so admin.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it definitely wasn't the job for me, but I never planned to stay. I sort of thought this will be a year of, doing something completely different, and then I'll go back. But the thing you don't realise is once you start getting paid, it's actually really hard to walk away from money.
Oh my gosh, do you know what? I get that. I do a lot of work with people, and I call it the golden handcuffs, that they're kind of handcuffed to something that's, paying them well. Often it's about superannuation. I can't leave this job because my superannuation or my money or whatever, but they hate what they're doing. And I'm not saying that you hated what you were doing, but a lot of people I work with they're staying in their jobs for, the financial security.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean,
and how old would you have been then? You would have been 20. You would have been 20.
Yeah. And getting paid quite well. And I was, talking to my friends who had gone to high school with, who were studying, and they were in a very different financial situation.
Yes.
And you sort of just appreciate, oh, this is actually not bad.
Not bad. Yeah. So how long did you stay doing that for?
I did that for 3 years, and then it just got to the point that I really wasn't enjoying. I wasn't enjoying being in Adelaide because I hadn't put in the effort to make a solid group of friends. I wasn't enjoying the work. I knew it wasn't what I wanted to do, and I wasn't seeing anyone, in this career who I really wanted to be. I didn't look around and go, oh, I want to be.
Yeah.
And that was really tough because I didn't want to go back to the degree I had been studying. I didn't want to be doing what I was doing, and I was feeling really lost. And I also didn't want to let down my family by leaving this great job. And so it just came down to, I went home and I was spending some time with my mum, and she saw how
she could see.
She could see, and she was really encouraging me to explore other options, look at other degrees. And I found a degree of landscape architecture, and it was an area that I'd never known about, and it really intrigued me. As soon as I started reading about it, I felt really passionate, and I left defence. I left full time. I became a reservist.
Oh, cool.
I moved back to Brisbane. I moved back in with my mum, and I started studying again.
Wow. I'm just going to, before we unpack all of that, there's a couple of things there that stand out for me, is that you trusted your gut, that, things just weren't really pushing your buttons for you. You could sort of, even though you were earning great money, the job itself wasn't really fulfilling you.
Yeah.
And then getting insight, talking to your mum. Mums are always great at, sometimes we overstep our mark, but try not to. But it's about getting a different perspective from somebody that knows you and trusts you, and they could see, your mum could see that you weren't as happy as things, so wanting the best for you, and then offering, helping you to look at some alternatives, which is great. And then when you said the landscape architecture just intrigued you, for me, they're little clues as well about, oh, this is interesting. It might not be, and I want to come back and find out whether you did end up being a landscape architect, but it might not be the thing you do, but it's giving you some clues as to what the next steps might be.
Yeah, absolutely.
What did you do? What did you do? Did you study?
So I studied for 3 years, and I ended up working, I think partway through my first year. I was really lucky. I had been working as a reserve in the army, and then I looked for a job in landscape architecture, and I secured an admin job that also had graphic design. And then through the next couple of years studying, they were getting me out onto site, and they were sort of really preparing me to be part of the company fully. And it was an amazing company. I was really lucky to work there. I made some great friends, and I had a really good experience. But
But I'm waiting for the but. Yeah.
But again, I was just feeling like I really enjoyed the first couple of years studying, and I felt it was really creative and really collaborative. And then working in the space, the reality of legislation and red tape and, all the other sort of industries working together, it wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. And that was scary again, because I was like, well, I've done this other thing and now I'm not loving it again. And my mum was sort of saying at this point, you kind of need to stick to a career, and you're not going to love everything about a job.
Yeah.
Which I think is very sensible. But another opportunity arose to become a photographer in the military.
Wow.
And
okay. Yep.
I just jumped.
So it's almost combining, isn't it? How I'm just a strong believer that we're here in this lifetime, and the universe presents us what we need.
Mm-hmm.
And it was also for you to get back into the military is kind of where you had spent some time, so you knew the environment, but it combined your creative elements as well. So photography within military, very, very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, and it's a really selective core to get into. There's only about 15 to 20 members who are actually photographers in the Army. So I couldn't believe this opportunity was coming my way. And, when I was telling friends and family that I was considering doing this, they were sort of, quite taken back, because they knew that I hadn't enjoyed it previously. And for me, I was approaching it, well, maybe it's the amount of creativity I want with the security of defence. So I was like, I somehow convinced them I could do the job. I was one of 2 female photographers. So,
wow.
defence is obviously very male dominated, but even that trade was incredibly male dominated. And I ended up duxing my course. I got posted to Canberra, and that's how I got here.
Interesting. Before I talk about what you're doing now,
mm-hmm.
One other little thing that popped out there for me, Olivia, is often our friends are very well-meaning, and when we share things with them, they give us advice based on their view of the world, and sometimes it's great advice, sometimes it's a little bit misdirected because they're not really sure about who we are and what we want. So I'm very selective about who I share stuff with and what advice or what I'm absolutely about running things by people, but not everybody, because I know there are some people in my world that, they might tell me what I want to hear, or they might just go, yeah, that'll never work because, and it's like, how do you bloody know? So I think that's interesting that, our friends are well-meaning, and sometimes they can see stuff, sometimes they can be great because they can see stuff that, we have blinkers on, and they see things from a different perspective. So I'm quite discerning about who are my go-to people for different things. I don't know if you relate to that at all.
Well, it was really interesting because when I was making this decision, there were almost 2 camps. My friends who are my age, they were the ones who were telling me, no, you've got to stay. You've got to, continue doing what you're doing. And I almost feel in reflection, we were all feeling that pressure to settle down and find a thing that, we're good at.
Yeah.
And my mum's friends, people who weren't as emotionally connected to me, they were just thinking about it from their perspective, and they were saying, jump, do it. You won't regret it. You can always come back to this if that's what you want. And it was really interesting that the older generation were telling me to go and, do something completely new, take a risk.
Yeah.
And my friends were sort of saying, oh, are you sure you want to start up something new once again? So
I wonder if that comes from, and it's probably not always the way, but lived experience about maybe some, the older people in your life, maybe they have learnt some lessons and they're giving you some advice from their view of the world. Maybe they're giving advice from some of their regrets as well.
Yeah.
I'm just playing out some scenarios in my life of where that's happened to me and where I've maybe done that for other people as well. I think mine comes from almost lessons learned and wanting others to, maybe benefit. But everybody's got their own lessons that they need to experience as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm so grateful that I decided to take that path and get me to where I am.
So what are you doing now? Are you still, I know you're a photographer.
Yeah.
Are you still a photographer in the military?
At the start of last year, I did transition from full-time to reserve. It was really busy to be full-time. I was away quite a lot. And I just realised that I wasn't in Canberra enough. I wasn't establishing the sort of connections that I wanted going forward with my life.
Interesting. Yeah.
And I decided to transition out to become a reserve, and then I started my own business. So now I run my own business in Canberra and I work as a reservist for the military. So I've got a bit of both.
Got the best of both worlds.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. Do you know what's interesting where you're saying that too is that you realised that you weren't making the connections here in Canberra, and that seems to have been a bit of a pattern when you were in Adelaide. Not making the connections there had an impact on your life experience. So was that something directly you thought about? Or
it really was. I was very intentional coming back in because I knew how it affected my mental health in Adelaide, and it was a major reason why I left defence.
Yes.
And then coming back in, it was something that I knew I needed to focus on because otherwise I'd end up back in the exact same position.
Love it. Love that.
Yeah.
About the lessons, what are the patterns, what are the lessons, and I really love how you say about being intentional as to what you want this experience to be like here, because, repeating the patterns, repeating some patterns are great, but repeating patterns that were things that we don't want in life, that's not so great. That's not so great.
Yeah. And I had made some really good friends when I first moved to Canberra, and all credit to them. I've travelled so much within defence, and they have always been here when I've come back. But it was just that I really wanted to establish strong connections and focus on creating a life. And I had met my partner at the time and then gone away for 4 months, and it was just realising that the things that I want for my life were going to be really hard to achieve if I was always going away it wasn't my decision to go, Yeah.
You're doing it for the job.
Exactly.
It's not that you're doing it with, friends to go on a holiday and things that, I absolutely get that. And what I'm hearing is that you've, really, starting to become really clear about things that are important to you in life and living your life in alignment with those and forging that path forward with your own business. And, you've got your creativity, you've got your photography business. What else? So what are you thinking about? Because when we started this podcast, it was around, your journey of self-discovery. We've talked about some of the elements of that. What's that journey kind of looking like for you from where you're at right now? And I know that that's a very big and broad question, but just throw something at me and we'll follow that up.
I think, and listening to your podcast has actually been a really big help, but I think I'm just realizing I know nothing. I don't know myself. I don't really know what makes me happy. I don't know the direction I want to take. I feel almost like a baby that's starting to realize all these skills that I want to be able to do.
Yeah.
But I have to find a way to do them. There are aspects of myself, of my emotions. I'm a really emotional person that I want to sort of work on going forward, that I have been working on the last couple of years. But I suppose I'm only just starting to realize I know nothing and I want to know myself more.
Yeah.
You know, I want to work on that.
Do you know what you've said there? I would challenge the fact, I think you do know probably more than you think you do at this stage about yourself, but it's about, getting the clarity around, who is Olivia and how do you want to show up and what are the elements of moving forward. And I find that really, really common with a lot of women, not at all stages of life, because life changes for us. And sometimes, when you talked about that you studied, then you entered the military, and then you got this inkling about, actually, that's not really what I want to do. For me, that's really common for a lot of people, that they go through things and then go, oh, actually, this hasn't turned out the way I wanted it to. Or even when you were talking about the landscape architecture, that it's kind of like, oh, actually, that's not really what I thought it was going to be. So what's next? And sometimes that what's next is that almost like that cavern of, that void of the feeling of not knowing. And it's, I refer to that, we go through these different learning and growth stages. And one of them is this unconscious incompetence. And it's like, we don't even know what we don't know. And it's that blissful ignorance that we kind of just go along with life. And sometimes that can be really great and beautiful. And sometimes we just don't even know what opportunities are there. We don't really know ourselves, or we maybe have lost sight of ourselves. We've lost connection with who we are, or we haven't quite made that connection. And it's probably where you're hovering around at the moment, kind of going, I know there are some things that I want in life that are important to me, but it's putting the pieces of the puzzle together is how I see it. I see sort of those pieces of the puzzle. So what are some of the things that you do to get to know, what are you doing to sort of explore who you are a little bit more?
I think slowing down and just being really intentional and thinking about decisions before I make them. Really trying to have a bit of self-talk, inner talk, instead of listening to music all the time. When I go for a walk, just going for a walk and putting different ideas, in front of myself, and what do I gravitate towards? What do I really want? Asking myself hard questions, because I think it's easy to just go through life and focus on what's happening right now and the next sort of step that I need to take career-wise or relationship-wise, but actually becoming a bit more intentional and trying to curate it a bit more with, well, what do I want? Is the path that I'm on the path that I want to be on? And as we've spoken about, I've jumped ship so many times, and that's been really fun. And so I'm thinking, is the path that I'm on now where I want my future to go? And as I said, I'm just at the beginning of that journey. There are so many unknown questions. I definitely need to start journaling, because that would be really helpful.
Actually, we talked about, Liv and I caught up for a coffee, and we were talking about journaling. Like, I love people who listen to the podcast, I'm sure they know that I love journaling, and I do different types of journaling. And sometimes just even, when you're working out what you want in life, is just to ask that question, what would I like in life? What would I like my life to be like? And for some people, it's like, well, I want to be a photographer. I want to be a landscape designer. I want to work in the military. For some people, they're very specific about the thing that they want to do. I think that's great. Where I come from is because I've never been specific about the thing I wanted to do. It's more about what experiences do I want in life? What's important to me to have in my life? And that gets down to my values. And one of the biggest things that I do is, how do I want to feel? How do I want to feel in the different areas of my life? How do I want to feel in relation to myself, how do I want to feel in relation to my family and my husband? How do I want to feel at work? How do I want to feel in relation to my finances and the things that I have in life? And when I think about how do I want to feel, sometimes life presents those things in a way that I haven't even, if I say I want to feel that way because I want to be X, and if I attach to that outcome of being X, sometimes that's not what life has planned. And then I get, people tend to get disappointed if they really attach to an outcome. But when we attach to how we want to feel, the outcome is kind of just a byproduct of that. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
I resonate with that so much, Catherine, because I think that's the thing that's been missing. I've never said I want to be a photographer, landscape architect.
Yeah.
I've never had that thing to go, okay, I can work towards that.
Yeah.
And I think, up until this point, I've really been searching for that thing that's going to make me happy. Well, I'll become a photographer. Yeah. And then, life's going to be on track. I'll be happy and, I can focus on all these other things. But instead, I'm starting to come to the conclusion that maybe I need to focus a little more on how I feel and, what I want emotionally rather than one career path or, one city being the thing that,
gives you that.
clicks.
Yeah.
And so it's just a whole change in perspective and my thinking, and realizing that is so exciting because it's like, it's almost like a weight off my shoulders. Like, okay, I know that there's not a career that I've been dying to do that I think will fulfill me. It's more experiences. And, I was saying to you the other day when we caught up, I've wanted to travel. Ever since high school, I've wanted to travel, and I've done a little bit. But that is something that I've wanted to do so much, but I've put it to the side because I've had to focus on the career and doing these things. And now I'm starting to think maybe I should focus on the thing that I know I've wanted to do, and maybe everything else will sort of fall into alignment.
Oh my gosh, I agree with that. And you still need to I'm not a person that says, if you just think it, it will happen. It's about think it, feel it, and do some stuff to help, bring those things into your life. So I'm absolutely about, planning and goal setting, but the emphasis isn't on the outcome. It's on how I want to feel and the things that I want to bring into my life. And the outcome kind of happens as a byproduct, if that makes sense. So I'm shifting my focus from doing to kind of being, and then the doing sort of happens from that. So it's a subtle shift, but it's a really powerful shift. And what I've learned over the years is to let go of the attachment to the outcome. Because if things don't turn out how I specifically planned and, had the nth degree of detail, that's where my disappointment comes from. So I've learned to let go of that. I still work towards goals, but without as much of a stranglehold on them.
Yeah, and I think for me, I'm a planner. I love organising. So I think I really have been trying so hard to find something that will give me it all. And, having listened to your podcast, I know that's just not possible. There's not going to be one thing that fulfills my every, need and desire. It is about really focusing on a bit more about me, what makes me happy, and asking these questions. And I'm almost embarrassed to say that I don't know. I don't know what makes me happy outside of little day-to-day things like spending time with my partner or my cat or, doing a trip. But do
you know what? Don't be embarrassed by that at all. I think that's a really common thing. I think that's actually probably more common than you think, that people get so caught up in the busyness of life that they feel good about life. But when I ask the question, what makes, what things make you happy? Sometimes that can be really hard for people to articulate. And that could be a really good thing to even just in your journal, when you get in your journal, is just what things make me happy, and just sit with it. And where do I feel joy? Where do I feel, that positive feeling? Where are the feelings of, oh, I could sit and do this? You get lost in doing. Who are the people that I feel good being around? And, I don't think it's about sit down and come up with the answer in one sitting. I think it's an evolution, especially when we're talking, Liv, about being at the beginning of the journey of that self-exploration. It's a lifelong journey. I'd say that you've probably, not right at the beginning, but you're probably at a fairly significant point around, well, where am I now and where would I like to be? And just even when you sit with that question, where am I now and where would I like to be? Trust those feelings that come up for you, and then you'll start to get little inklings. And then you'll start to go, oh, actually, I feel really happy when I'm around other people that I connect with and I have, similar values and interests too. That makes me happy. People make me happy. So it's not I don't think it's a definitive list. And I think my list, there are some core things there, but there's other stuff that, comes and goes off that list as well. But I think I think that would be a very cool thing to just even sit with. And when I say about journaling, for me, when I write in a journal, that's a connection between me and my higher, self spirit guide. I can do it without journaling, but it's really powerful when I journal. A lot of other people can still ask those questions and not write it down, and it can be as equally powerful.
Yeah.
I remember when I was deciding to leave a really great job and starting my business, I had this inkling that, I wanted to have my own business. And I just asked the question, what could that be? What will it be? But what could it be? So every morning when I went on my walk, I just asked that same question. What could it be if I was to start my own business? And I would just take notice of little feelings that I would get. And, I love clothes. I love style. I love helping people to feel good. So one of the options was to be a stylist. And it's like, well, if I was a stylist, what could that look like? And then there'd be other feelings coming up. Oh, yeah, but I really love coaching and training and the consultancy. Oh, okay, if I was to do that, what could that look like? And I just asked that question, what could it look like? What could it look like? And every morning I would get, often the same answer. The next day I'd get something different. But I reckon that was probably a 12-month period where I sat with just what could that look like? And then it was just the same thoughts started coming up and coming up and coming up. It's like, okay, so this is where I'm in my gut that was feeling. And I would journal about that. I would ask the questions about that. And it was just about tapping into insights and following them. Some of them, I look back on and going, oh my God, what was I even thinking? But they're just little detours that life gives you to check whether you're really serious about what you want or
absolutely. And I just know, over the last year running my own business, it might not be the perfect fit, but gosh, I feel so empowered and I feel like I'm taking charge. I'm starting to really be intentional with the direction I set and with the things that I do and the jobs that I take on for my business. And just that shift going from defense where they're giving you jobs, you're doing, a few different things a week, you don't really get a say in the matter. It's just whoever's available, to now, well, it's my business. This is the way I want to present myself. These are the sort of jobs I want to take on. These are the sort of clients I want to work with. And being able to think about that and really go, who do I want to be in this business? Who do I want to work with? And asking those questions has been so empowering for me. And I think it has sparked asking myself deeper questions about who I am and what I want from life.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that so much. And I think the element of being intentional is, who do I want to work with? How do I want to show up? And I would say one of the things that's really important for you, one of your values, is about being in control of and it's not about being in control, this stranglehold, but being in control of your destiny and not having your destiny dictated to you. So very, very similar. I can see so many similarities from, my journey when I was exploring the same sort of thing. And when I left, when I was talking before about starting my own business, I left an incredible job. It was with a team of, like, an organization. It was almost like the ideal job. But there was one element missing. I was never going to be the ultimate decision maker there. I was never, ever going to be the boss of that business.
Yeah.
And that was the thing I needed. I needed to be the ultimate decision maker for my business and my work. And it's kind of like, if I'm going to be the ultimate decision maker, where do I get to be the ultimate decision maker? There are some jobs, but, maybe your own business. Oh, okay.
I agree with that so much.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's not about being a chokehold control, but it's just that, like, for me, I think it was the quiet confidence in knowing that I was capable. And because I had done quite a few jobs previously, and I was in that really junior role, I was so eager to just take, to have a bit more responsibility. And it was actually in defense. I went to Vanuatu for 4 months. And it was during, sorry, just let me have a drink of water. Sorry. It was during COVID, and so the numbers were really limited of how many people could go. And so I went over there as the reporter, as the videographer, as the photographer, and I did all these things as such a junior photographer.
Yes.
And without that other person there to go, oh, is this okay? Should I be doing it like this? How would you do it? You just learn to rely on yourself, figure things out, and come up with solutions in the moment, whereas previously I might have, panicked and asked someone else. And that self-reliance, I came back to Australia and I was like, I'm so ready to be doing this for myself. And it's the best move I could have made. I have so much more confidence having run my own business. And
actually that's beautiful to hear that is it a sink or swim situation? Maybe it's about coming up with your own decisions, but how empowering that is to know that you can do it, and then knowing that you can bring that forward into whatever you're going to do next. And I would encourage you, whatever you're going to do next, know that that's that you've got that confidence, that belief that, those days when I experience them, those days when I just go, oh man, what am I even doing here? Like, I've just got no idea. It's about coming back to that anchor point and going, actually, I got this. I might not know the exact answer now, but I know how I can actually work through it. Oh my gosh, that's so good. So what do you think is next for you, Liv? I know we're sort of talking about, not being sure. What are the next steps in your journey, do you think?
I think getting really clear on what I want. And I know I really want to travel. That's something that I've wanted to do since I was in high school. And I think it's the time to start prioritizing those deep desires in me. If I felt like this, for 10 plus years, it's probably time to start acting on it. So I think I really want to travel. I'd love to live overseas. So that's a possibility. Even just getting more clear on what I want, the direction my business to take. When I started, it was quite a wide, I'll do anything. And the longer it's gone on, I've really narrowed it down to actually being a bit more deliberate. These are the clients I want to work with. And there's still so much progress to go there. So I don't know. But the thing is, I'm just
I think you've just outlined just more clarity around, you know, what you're wanting life to be like. I think you've also said about that travel and that living overseas, and I think I shared this with you, but the my rocking chair test when I'm, you know, in the latter stages of my life and sitting in my rocking chair on the front veranda of my house, thinking back on life. I don't want there to be regrets when I'm thinking about life. And that's the regrets of, you know, not having done something, maybe doing something that's a bit dumbass. But I don't want there to be regrets in life. So I often think about what would I be thinking in my rocking chair if I was to do this or not to do this. Is it something I'm going to regret? And I don't want, I mean, I do have regrets at some, you know, some things.
Natural.
It's just like, oh, bloody hell, what was I thinking? But, and that being, you know, just following your passions and following your passions. And it sounds like travel is definitely one for you. Yeah.
I'm just so excited because I know that I've had so many opportunities already in life and I'm so young. Yeah. I'm excited to be making those really intentional decisions going forward.
Yes. Yeah, that's very cool. Liv, where can our listeners find you? We've got the details in the show notes, but Instagram. Yeah.
Instagram is Olive Maeve.
Yeah.
You can go to my website, olivemaeve.com. Yeah, I'd love to.
We'll put the details. We've absolutely got those in the show notes. So if people want to follow you, find out more about your journey, maybe keep in touch with you to see where you're at with your you know, your journey and where you're maybe traveling to. Olive, that was beautiful. I absolutely loved talking with you today. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. It was such a pleasure to be on and start to work through things with you.
My pleasure. Hugs and happiness, gorgeous. I will see you about. Bye.
See you, Catherine.
Here we are for a little bit of bonus goodness. And Liv and I were just talking about, you know, finding happiness. And Liv, do you want to just share what you said about looking for happiness in external stuff?
I think I've been focusing on career and all these external things making me happy. And I've just gotten to the point where I'm realizing it hasn't. And there has to be more. And I know within myself that there is. And so I'm starting to refocus on what are those deep feelings of passion and desire within myself that I need to focus on that opposed to career. And
And I think for me, I get a lot of joy from my business. Like my business is my passion. But like I said in the podcast, I don't attach my identity to my business. And there's been times where I have, where it's kind of just like, oh God, what else I've put so much into my work and I've kind of neglected some of those other areas of life. What I've kind of learned over the years is, yes, my business can make me happy, but I don't identify as my business.
I think you've just triggered something within me. I think I have been searching for something to be my identity rather than being vulnerable with myself and seeing me and being me, trying to be something else to
here's
something
a question,
in that.
Here's a question for you. And when I pose this to people, a lot of them don't like it. But even just the question, who am I? And I know that that's where you sort of started out with the podcast chat, but who am I? And for me, when I address that, I'm a number of, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a businesswoman, an entrepreneur, but who am I without all of that? And what the process I went through, and it could be different, is I just listed a whole lot of my qualities. Who am I? What are my labels in life? What are the qualities? So who, the type of person that I am. And this was an evolution. This was, I did not just sit down and do this in one hit. I would sit down over a period of time and just go, who am I? Like, who are the different elements of me? I would brainstorm and I do mind maps of it. And then I sort of came up with, some key, are they qualities? They're key elements of who I am. I know who I am at my core, but when people see me in different, contexts, they see different parts of that. But at my core, I am that same person. I just bring elements of me. And some of them I share very freely. Some of them I keep very, very private because they're for my connection and not for other people. But at my core, there are some elements about who I am.
I think
does that resonate? Does that resonate?
It really does. I think I've almost lost sight of who I am. I can remember when I was a kid, I was so, and I mean, this is all children, but I was just so carefree and go with, I was wild and fun and really vibrant. And I think over the years, I really have noticed that I've been trying to dim that light because, people tell you you're weird or too much. And I think I've probably taken on other people's opinions far too much and started to reflect that in myself. And it's really sad because, I remember how happy and vibrant I was. And I'm not saying I'm not happy. I'm
no, I get that. I get that. Yeah.
I definitely am very aware of how I am in social settings, and I don't want to be too much. I don't want to be too loud. And, if someone just looks a little funny at you, you're like, oh, you're almost trying to read their mind of how do they think of you? Am I pushing the boundaries? Am I, I'm definitely not a wallflower. And I think perhaps I've been trying to be.
Man, I reckon we could even do, I'm just trying to look for that poem from Marianne Williamson about, dulling your, who are you not to be shining brightly? That fear of success and fear of who we are. Do you know what it could be really cool to do? Even just a few little series of I don't know, just some mini coaching sessions online, because what you're sharing there is, going, I've almost lost sight of who I am because of feeling it's not okay to be who I am from conditioning and what other people have said, and where does that actually come from? And, I can relate to that so much. I can relate to that so much that I put a lot of emphasis on what other people, or I think I should be doing what's right in, situations. And just when I said before about who am I, when I went through that process of, all my qualities and the different elements of me, I then broke it down into an overarching word, I guess, that sums up all these things about me. And it's about being free-spirited. Like I am just a free-spirited being, which means that I don't like being told what to do. So I like to have my own, control and, input, that you can understand why I started my own business there. I like to experience new things. I love curiosity, and I can share it with you at some stage, and even the listeners, if you're the people watching, that I have my list of what free-spirited means to me. Now, it's a very personal list, but it encapsulates all the elements of who I am and what's important to me. And that's almost like my guiding star of who I am and how I want to show up in life. And I can't articulate that in a sentence or a phrase other than being free-spirited. But it is it is my list of, it's my criteria for how I want to show up in life and who I am.
Yeah, I mean, I can relate to that so much. And I think the reasons I've pushed back against the careers that I've chosen so much is I don't like being told what to do. And that's probably not the type of personality that should go into defence. Because
exactly. because that might not end well for you at some stage.
Yeah. And I think maybe I've been trying to fit into a mold of what I should be rather than just doing me.
Create your own mold. That's what do you know what, that is, if I were going to sum up what I've learned, is to create my own mold, not to try and fit. And it doesn't mean that my mold is this, I don't go out to shock people. I'm not one of those, those, fuck society and stuff like that. It's about, I do create my own mold. I do life my way. And the thing is about feeling completely okay with that. Yeah. Oh my gosh, Liv, we could talk. I'm just having this thought bubble. Maybe we need to do a regular little series of little vignettes of where you're at in life. I think that would be very cool.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, gorgeous. See ya.
Bye.